and I'm here with our other zoo staff, Courtney and Deborah, and we're here on Endangered Species Day to release a salamander called the marbled salamander. The marbled salamander is state threatened in Massachusetts, but is actually more common in the southern states, but here it's the northern edge of their range. And here in Middlesex Fells, they used to occur many decades ago, but no one has seen them since the 1930s. So, working along with Massachusetts Division of Fish and Wildlife, the Natural Heritage Program, we're working on reestablishing a population here at Middlesex Fells. The habitat is great, and marbled salamanders need vernal pools such as this to be able to lay their eggs. And then the young hatch as little larvae, look like little tadpoles, and they live in the water from the fall through the winter and then into the spring. And then late in the spring, early summer, they start to transform into the land stage. And what we did is we collected some larvae in western Massachusetts, and we raised them in the zoo indoors for 9 months. And we got them to transform onto the land stage. And so now they've grown a little bit bigger. They still have a long way to grow. It takes several years for them to reach adult size. But we're here in the Fells to establish the population of marbled salamanders that are now able to crawl out on land. And we're going to weigh them first. And then we're going to release them underneath some of these logs here. And marbled salamanders love to live underground. They're in a family of salamanders called the mole salamanders, like spotted salamanders. And so they just stay underground. They come out on rainy nights and maybe feed and venture out, but basically they very rarely see them. Sometimes people find them under a log in the woods, but they are pretty hard to find, very secretive. But these guys are going to be released. We have over 100 that we raised at the zoo. So what Courtney and Deborah are going to do, they're going to weigh each of the salamanders so we get an idea how big they are when we release them. And we'll get some nice close-up shots. And you can see they like to kind of huddle together where it's really nice and moist. Like all amphibians, they need moisture to survive. And so they like to be underneath the moss there. And you can see they're on the scale, and each one will get recorded. And as adults, each one has a special pattern. They have kind of whitish bands across their back. So each adult salamander has a unique marking, so they can be identified as individuals. And they generally range in size from 1.5 to about 3 grams. So they're still really small. They're probably about 1.5 inches long, most of them. But they'll grow to be about 4 to 5 inches in length as adults. And unlike other salamanders that lay their eggs in the spring, marbled salamanders like to lay their eggs in the fall when vernal pools are dry. And as the vernal pools fill up with water over the winter, the eggs will hatch. So they kind of have a head start over other salamanders that use vernal pools. Okay. And so maybe we could release a couple under the log. They go right underneath the log, underneath the leaf litter to hide and keep themselves moist and cool.
John, we had a question about if there are a lot of salamanders in general in the wild.
It depends on the species. The most common species we find in the woods in the northeast are the redback salamanders, and they're commonly found underneath logs Those are the ones people see the most. They're kind of long and skinny with a brownish or reddish orange back. Some are just all kind of gray color. And then often people will see the spotted salamanders, which are more closely related to the marble salamander. Those are the big black ones with yellow spots, and they very often breed in vernal pools throughout the state. And there's some other species, but they're more rare, not as common in the state.
And how many are we releasing today, roughly?
We're releasing over 100, just over 100, 105.
How big will these guys grow once they're full grown?
They'll grow to be about 4 or 5 inches long as adults.
Can you talk a little bit about what the head starting process looks like?
Yes.
What we do to care for them before they're released?
Yeah, so we collect, we have permission from the state to collect them from Western Massachusetts. And of course, they're fully aquatic at that stage. So we have tanks set up at the zoo, and we feed them baby brine shrimp that we actually grow at the zoo, and Daphnia. And then as they get bigger, we feed them blackworms. And then they start to develop their legs. And then usually about February, they start losing their external gills and their tail fins, and they start preferring to be more on land. So we have tanks that have like half water, half land. And then as they completely emerge onto land, we then put them in a terrarium setup. So basically moist soil with moss and bark and places they can hide. And at that point, their food changes. So we give them baby crickets and fruit flies as their main diet.
Someone wanted to know if we head start other animals, other reptiles and amphibians.
We do. The zoo head starts Blanding's turtles, wood turtles, and so those are two species we work a lot with, and work with a lot of schools and other volunteers that do the head starting for those species.
Once they're released, do they stay in groups a lot, or do they tend to be more solitary?
We suspect they'll probably get more solitary, but we really don't know for sure. They might stay out in small groups for a while. It's certainly possible, but generally speaking, they are solitary animals. So.
As we're releasing the staff, you think we're about out of time. Is there anything else you want to say about these guys before we sign off?
No, I think we just hope to see them here in the future on their own in the wild. That's our hope for the future here.